Welcome to the all-new series of the Get Growing Roadshow.
This year we're bringing our advice to you.
We'll hit the road meeting keen gardeners all over New Zealand, answering their questions and helping with backyard challenges.
And we're kicking things off here in the Bay of Plenty, where we're ready to solve all of your plant and landscaping problems.
Want to get your garden into shape this summer? Let's get started.
Coming up this week, our new teammate Nicola tackles a backyard that's totally out of control. Justin learns about Zen gardening on a steep hillside. And tips from me for your weekend in the garden.
We have this happening on the rose, the natives, and also the yellow guava it's tapped.
So in summer, is your garden a lovely tranquil place to be, or is it full of the sound of cicadas singing?
It's full of tuis, birds and cicadas.
Yeah, so this is actually a really common piece of damage that cicadas do, and what it is that the females, they lay the eggs in a small crack in the stem, and then when they hatch out, they basically rip open this great big scar. And you see it a lot in things like fruit trees and the young growth of fruit trees. And what you should probably do is when you see these big oviposition scars, is what they're known as, just trim the plant back past that point, because otherwise it'll just weaken and snap.
Cicada damage.
I know, jolly cicadas.
We've just moved into a new house. We've pretty much got a blank canvas. I want to plant citrus, I want to plant some feijoas, have a veggie patch, but also have some colour. What would you recommend?
One mistake that I see often is that people sort of concentrate on little areas.
Yep.
My rule is if I can stand in one place and see one area,
Yep.
then I like to see continuity in that area. So I want trees that are similar. It might be through colour or texture or something like that.
Yep.
But I want the whole, that's what will hold the garden together. What I'm thinking here, right, is this one here, which is basically a cherry tree.
Oh.
A nice clean trunk.
Yeah.
Which means that you can walk around underneath it.
Okay.
It's going to have quite a spectacular show of flowers, but really lovely green dappled light, a dappled tree.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
My pleasure.
Meanwhile, Nicola's fielding a call for help coming in on Facebook.
I've got one here from Sia who reckons that her backyard is completely out of control, so I'm going to head in there and see if I can help. So this is your garden?
Yes, it is. Under all of this, it's pretty. There's potential here. There definitely is. Just down here.
Wow, there's a lot going on in here, isn't there?
Yeah.
And this is a veggie patch?
Yep. We've got like some broad beans. We've got some kale, and apparently this is a Swiss chard.
Well done on the veggie garden,
Thank
guys.
you.
And look at this avocado tree.
Yep.
It's laden with fruit. You've got bromeliads. See the lovely pink tops there? That's a whole lot of bromeliads there, which I reckon will divide up and spread around into the gap bits there.
Okay.
We need to push some stuff back, so do a bit of pruning. I reckon we need to prune this feijoa back a bit. It's a good time of year to do it because it doesn't fruit until late summer. So we'll cut that back a bit, which will let in all this lovely sun.
You know, with the summer months approaching and whatnot, it's ideal for us to use it every day, but it's just so crowded and so gloomy. It's not really happy.
My plan is to make this like a magnet for the flat. We're going to totally transform it.
Yay.
What Sia wants here is an entertaining area that will draw her flatmates out of the house to start making use of the fruit trees and garden. We're going to weed and prune and give these beautiful plants in here some space to shine. And we'll refresh the old table as a centrepiece for this outdoor sanctuary. We start by pruning the feijoa. Oh, good sharp saw helps. Look at that, straight through. You need to get right down the bottom to ideally get the roots up. Right, so we've cleared a bit of space here. The next thing is to look at this table. Hamish from 100 Day Batch has come along to help me. Hey, Hamish.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good, how are you going?
Good, good, good.
So this is it.
Wow, you've got your work cut out for you here.
I'm hoping you've got your work cut out for you here.
The simplest thing to do is going to be to put some timber legs on them. Be kind of nice to have them a little bit more detailed and having the tabletop still slightly rustic.
Yep.
Belt sand it down. Painting's going to be key. Probably going to want to use an aqua enamel to give it a bit of durability outside. It'll be easier for them to clean down as well. The higher the gloss, they can wipe it down a lot better. To help me, I've got Nick, and he's from Hire a Hubby. We want everyone to still know that this was an old door. By leaving it there and giving it a new coat of paint in colour Kandinsky, we're going to freshen up, make it much more serviceable. It's going to pop in the garden, yet it's still going to look like what it is, which is an old door.
This is one of my favourite things to do, uncovering a really beautiful garden. So we've lifted a lot of the foliage back. I've lightly pruned the avocado tree just to basically get it out of people's faces and let light into this space. I haven't given it a hard prune. It's still got lots of beautiful fruit on it and it's still fruiting. So if you're going to do any work to a fruiting tree, just make it kind of light. I've taken the Feijoa back quite a bit. Now that's not fruiting at the moment and it's not even in flower, so it's a good time to give it a hard prune if you want. So I've created a lot of space inside, taken the crossover branches, the dead and diseased branches out of the inside, so it's got lots of breathing space in there now. Bromeliads are epiphytes, so they don't actually need to be in the soil, and they are constantly sending out little pups, which is why they've become quite congested in here. So what I've been doing is pulling some out and transferring them to a bare space under the Feijoa tree. So they come out really easily. I'm just going to get this little fella out here and transfer it. Most bromeliads like to be in part shade rather than full sun. I've made quite a deep hole here, mainly because the bromeliad's so large, it needs to be, this will keep it nice and sturdy and in place. So just pop that in. Chuck a couple of rocks around it because they're in the garden. Nice.
So now we've sanded down the door that we're going to use as our table, and I'm just measuring up exactly where I want the posts to go before we flip it over and actually install them. Now this is dressed 95 by 95 H4, and we're going to use just 75 by 95 bracing just to keep it nice and stable. I'm now drilling guide holes just to put the screws through so we don't crack any of the wood when the screws are going in. So now that we've screwed in all our table posts legs, we're just going to get the bracing around it to make it nice and stable. The most important thing about this is to make it all level, and so it's all about measuring and measuring a second time.
Next stage, undercoat, really important. It can be exciting and you want to chuck on some colour, but if you don't do the prep right, you're only going to end up with what we had here before, which is a peeling, flaking table.
Planted daffodils and they've flowered on one half of the container but not on the other half.
So sometimes what happens with daffodils, well, there's two things. It could either be slugs and snails, and the thing that happens with slugs and snails is that they will literally crawl up the side of the pot and they will eat out the bulb buds as they come up, and so you never see it and you probably won't even see any evidence of it. And the fact that it's all on one side of the pot and not the other kind of implies that maybe you've got a bug problem on one side, because the only other thing that can really go wrong is that when you planted the bulbs, that some of those bulbs may have had a little bit of rot, or they may be a little bit younger. So when you put them in at the beginning, but usually you have no trouble at all with daffodils flowering in their first year. So all you can really do is just keep them going until they die down again and keep your fingers crossed that you have better luck next year.
Thank you.
Coming up, Nicola and Hamish transform Sia's overgrown garden and my gardening to-do list for the weekend. Welcome back to the Get Growing Roadshow.
Linda and I are here to answer your questions about gardening and your outdoor spaces.
Do you have any suggestions on what to do with earwigs in artichokes?
So what I tend to do is when I've picked them, I drown them. So just put the whole head in a bucket of water, weight it down, and leave it for a few minutes. But how you get rid of earwigs in your garden is really easy. Just get yourself your local paper and do this. Just scrunch it up, just scrunch it like this quite loosely and pack it into the plants. And what it does is this is the easiest earwig trap, because earwigs are nocturnal, so they come out at night and do all their damage then, and then they sneak away and hide during the day. And that's why they hide inside the globe artichoke heads, because it's nice and dark and snug and safe from predators. So you do that and then they'll all end up in the scrunched newspaper. In the morning, go out, harvest it, burn it. It's not particularly kind to the earwigs, but it's the easiest way to get rid of them.
Nicola and Hamish are still working hard in Sia's out-of-control backyard.
We've got this shrub here, not quite sure what it is. I think it might be a hibiscus, but while it's dormant, I reckon let's take it back because it's kind of poking out in all directions. So we're going to find a good node. The nodes are the little buds down the side here. Right. So this is all potential new growth. And so just go around the shrub and find where you want to take it back to, and just make nice clean cuts all the way around.
Above the node though, yeah?
Yeah, above the node.
Okay.
Sia's garden has some unwanted plants too. Privet is a listed pest plant around the country. We don't want privet in our gardens, mainly because, you know, when it flowers, the pollen from the flower it induces asthma and allergies. It's quite nasty, and it's also really invasive. So the best way to get rid of it is to dig it out by the roots. Look what I've discovered hidden under all the vegetation. An old box hedge. A really good historical fact about these hedges in Te Pairi is that they were a sign of wealth because it required so many gardens to keep your hedges clipped. The more hedges you had, the more wealthy you were, obviously, because you could employ more gardeners. And that's why in a lot of those traditional English mansion gardens you see like just lawns and lawns of clipped hedges because they were a status symbol. It's my secret desire to have everyone in New Zealand with their own veggie garden, so this is a really good start. We're just going to fill in the spaces with more green, really, so it will be an everyday eating garden.
Oh, well done. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
While Hamish gets the final coat of paint on our garden table, there is one last thing to do. To complete our entertaining area over here, I'm just going to pot up this lemon tree. It's just a Maya lemon, which does particularly well in Auckland, and it's just going to zhuzh up that space even more. Okay, so we just need to fill the pot up with a bit more potting mix. So I'm going to give this little baby a bit of Acticoat. I'm just going to put in a couple of spoons as a side dressing. The ratio is 5 tablespoons to 1 square metre. It gives a 12-month gradual release for the plant, so it'll give it all the food that it needs to keep growing and producing lots of fruit and flower. There's a great variety of citrus. There's mandarins, lemons, dwarf grapefruits, a lot of varieties made specifically to thrive in pots.
We've had some really severe frost down here, and this is the first time I've had briar damage. And I just wondered whether you think I should prune that back.
There's nothing you can do to salvage those leaves, that foliage, you know, that's kind of gone. And you probably got tip damage as well on all the new nodes coming through.
Yeah, on the whole thing,
Yeah, so I think definitely pruning back is probably down to the next node. So you'll notice that there's little long stems and there's a little area, which is a node.
Familiar with those.
That's right. So just clip down to those, and you'll see that you'll start getting new points coming out, and 3 or 4, maybe 5, and you get that lovely new foliage coming through. And I don't think at this time of the year you're going to have a repeat of that situation.
No, I hope not.
What advice do I give new gardeners who want to grow their own food but don't really know where to start? Look around your neighbourhood, go to your local farmers market and check out what grows well in your climate, or head along to your nearest botanic garden and see what's doing well right now where you live. I'm here in the edible garden at the Auckland Botanic Gardens to share some ideas on what you can do in your garden this week. I'll be planting peas, trenching, planting potatoes and making the most of spent winter crops. Peas prefer the cool, moist soil of spring to the heat of summer, but it's not too late to sow a crop now for Christmas. The thing with peas is that they're best sown direct, and if you have a look at a punnet of seedlings, you can see why. They have quite long tap roots and they're quite delicate, so it's hard to plant these out without damaging them, and when you do that, it just checks their growth. I did a trial of peas a few years ago and I found that the best variety was Sugar Snap Climbing, and they had the most peas per pod and they were the biggest as well. And so when I'm sowing peas, I always just put 2 peas in each hole, and that's really just in case one dies. Drop them in, cover them up with soil, only about 1 centimetre deep, and then when they come up, just protect them from slugs and snails and birds, they'll scratch them out. Or if you're a little bit impatient, you can just grow peas as microgreens or pea shoots. And you just need a whole packet of seed and a shallow container about 5 to 6 centimetres deep, filled with potting mix. And then you just take the seeds and chuck the whole packet in. And then just lightly cover it with an extra sprinkle of potting mix. And just keep that moist. And in about a month from now, you'll have a fabulous bowl of pea microgreens ready to snip straight off into your salads. These purple-flowered snow peas have come to the end of the season, but remember that because they're a legume, like all legumes, they fix nitrogen, which means that if you pop them into your compost heap when they're done, they'll recycle all that goodness for your soil. Sometimes the old ways when it comes to gardening are the best ways, and if you look in old gardening books, you quite often see trenching referred to, and this is how our grandparents used to deal with their veggie scraps before composting became trendy. The way it works is that at the beginning of the season you dig a big trench at one end of your vegetable garden, about 30 centimetres deep, and then when you need somewhere to put all your veggie scraps you just lay them into the trench, cover it over with soil, and then when you're ready to plant your seedlings you just put them in straight on top of the old buried trench, and by the time these seedlings have grown down into those semi-rotten scraps they will have broken down just enough to release all those nutrients back in to some good healthy growth. If you want new potatoes for Christmas dinner, you've got to get your seed potatoes in the soil quick smart, because even the really fast varieties like Jersey Benny or Cliff Kidney take about 80 to 90 days to mature. And when you get your seed potatoes ready to go into the soil, make sure they're already sprouted. So they should have little sprouts about 1 centimetre long, but don't leave them until they're growing big tentacles, because you're liable to knock those off when you bury them in the soil. And to be honest, there's no rocket science to planting potatoes. Just dig a hole, drop your seed potato in, cover it up with soil, and you're done. And if you're wondering just how many potatoes you're going to get back from each of these seed potatoes, you can expect to harvest about 1.5 kilos to 2 kilos, so they're really good value. Don't be in too much of a rush to pull out your spent winter crops. Even though these brassicas have gone to flower, so they're not much use for us to eat, they're really great for nectar for bees. And also the flowers are actually edible, so you could add them to your salads. This Italian parsley is also past its best, but you can still keep nipping off these side shoots to keep it going for a few weeks longer, and just snip out these central stems as they run to flower, or just let it go to seed. When these little umbrella-shaped flowers open up, they're a magnet for hoverflies, and they'll eat all your aphids later in summer. After the break, Justin finds inspiration in a sloping Zen garden.
It's spectacular.
Well, it's a bit different.
We're back at the Get Growing Roadshow, taking your gardening and outdoor questions on the spot.
I have a creeping gardenia that has white, like little white balls in amongst the stalks.
So with gardenias, they're quite prone to mealybug, and that's what that is. It looks like almost like kind of little cotton tufts all over the plant, and they get right into sort of all of the nooks and crannies of the stems. So the easiest way to deal with mealybug, and it's quite common on indoor plants as well, is just to use a spraying oil. And this is great because it's an organic solution, so it's not actually a chemical spray. Mix it up at about 10 mils to a litre, and then give your plant a really good dousing with it. And you want to make sure you get right into all of the stems, and also spray around the base of the plant, because they'll also grow in the roots, and then do that every fortnight until you win the war. And you will win the war, because how a spraying oil works is it basically just smothers the mealybug, and they have a little waxy coat, so when you use a conventional insecticide it just washes straight off, whereas this stuff smothers them.
So even when if it rains afterwards, that's still...
Just apply it again another fortnight later.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good luck.
I'm visiting a Zen-inspired garden designed by Jules Moore from Zone Landscaping Specialists. The job was finished just a few days ago. Her brief was to maximise a clay slope, creating a functional garden space with an influence of Zen elements, including boardwalks, rockery and appropriate planting. A main feature of the site is basically it's a slope.
Yes,
It's clay,
yes,
and it's west facing.
I know.
Incredibly challenging site. Should we take a look?
Well, let's go.
Well, here we are. I guess this is the first landing in the ascent to the top of the garden. The first thing that really stands out, really are the sort of unusual plants.
I had this growing in my nursery for some time, and it's quite gnarly, and so I chose this as a feature as you're coming up the stairs. This is a Loropetalum. In these crevices, in between these stairs and rocks, we've got all these little surprises coming up that are bulbs that aren't, Japanese or anything like that, but it's just a nice, fresh, colourful surprise when spring comes around.
Well, I'll tell you what, I feel like a mountain climber coming up these steps, but they're so beautiful. I mean, I like the way that they're not all just lined up.
That's the philosophy of Zen. It kind of like gives you a little bit of a challenge. If you had a whole straight row, you'd be going up there thinking about your day, but with this kind of design, you stop and it's contemplative. Hey, and what about this funky little Acer here?
I mean, that's a really unusual plant. I mean, it seems to be a specialty of yours.
Well, I didn't actually grow this, it was grown by another grower, but I really love its uniqueness.
Yep.
And that would have taken years to get like that, because as it would have needed to be trained each sort of like turn and curve to get to that stage. And it's going to be a real feature of the garden.
Should we head up to the lawn?
Absolutely.
So it's more of a practical area, really. I mean, this is somewhere like a destination that we finally arrived, I feel like.
Well, it's, after all that huffing and puffing up the stairs, that seat's looking pretty inviting, isn't it?
That's an amazing seat, actually. It's really beautiful.
I found that piece of Macrocarpa just by chance. In the original plan, we had something else, so it kind of had picked me on it.
So I really like the way, actually, that this path that's in front of us, the schist path, is set out, and it goes from the garden, through the garden, and then through the lawn.
This is just as low maintenance as you can make it.
Yep.
And artificial lawns have really become popular within the last 2 years. We're installing a lot now.
Right, so that's because this is a small lawn,
Yeah.
Pretty inaccessible for a
Yes.
lawnmower. Soil conditions are heavy.
Yes.
So that's going to be tricky for grass.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
This is an all-weather, basically lawn. And so a really good solution for this kind of environment. Looking at the plants in this area too, I mean, obviously the coral maple is...
Oh, aren't they gorgeous?
That's right, it's amazing
Yeah.
to have that in the garden in winter.
Well, I think once it gets up a little bit more, it's going to be striking. Doesn't the bamboo just set it off?
Well, definitely, the handrails,
Yeah.
as I say, it's just such a nice thing to come
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really solid too.
Well, this particular bamboo doesn't split, so that's why we've used it at the top, and then there's another variety at the bottom.
Okay.
So we're just waiting for it to dry out before we give it an ultimate colour, or we can maybe just leave it natural. So
Make
it's
that decision later.
yeah, work in progress, I guess.
So for you, what was the most successful part of this garden?
I love the planting and the rock formation together. Plants and rock, I would say. I guess you could say, Justin, the garden works pretty well on all levels.
You can especially say that about this garden. Definitely.
Thank you.
Wow, I can't believe how much space is in here.
So much.
This is great. The garden looks gorgeous. There's lots of lovely dappled light this time of day. We've taken all the weeds out, the acanthus, the oxalis. We've moved some bromeliads, underplanted the feijoa, which we've pruned. It's letting heaps of light. In fact, we've cleared all the weeds off the paving. You know what this space says to me? Party.
Definitely. Hey guys, thanks so much. It's beautiful, I love it.
It looks really gorgeous. I reckon it's going to attract all your flatmates out here to this lovely table.
That's right, now you've really got a sanctuary to relax and spend time in.
So that's it for this week.
Well, hopefully we've given you lots of creative ideas that you can use this weekend in your garden.
No excuses, get out there and get growing. Write to us with your growing and landscaping questions at facebook.com/getgrowingnz. Next week on the Get Growing Roadshow, Justin's working to bring a dull deck back to life.
You can easily make something like this, you know, even if you've just got a handsaw.
I'll be sharing more spring planting tips. If you're keen on summer salads, you can plant all of your favourite lettuces in containers. We're back on the roadshow answering your growing questions, and Nicola looks at hedging options for an exposed backyard.
That should be pretty happy.